Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Universal Dialect Show, show number 32. I have a returning guest on. I couldn't hold off, you know what I mean? I had to have him on as soon as possible. He's constantly dropping material. He's got Esoteric Eddie on YouTube. Everybody needs to check that out. Links will be in the description. I believe he was my 10th. He was in my first 10 episodes, so I had to have him back. I want to introduce again Esoteric Eddie. What's up, my brother?
What up? What up? Good to be here. Glad to see you again.
Yeah, man, it's great to see you, man. I wish I could have you on every week, but because you're always
Yeah,
dropping dope shit, man. Real quick, let's just go into quickly your origin story again. You know what I mean? Where you're from and all that stuff, and what led you down the path. Real quick if you
absolutely.
can.
Yeah, man. So I've been researching the occult, the conspiratorial, the esoteric for about 15 years now. 28 years old now. I've been pretty much just researching all this stuff since I was like 13, 14. But as I usually say, my entire life has really revolved all of this, ever since I was a kid, all the way up until now. I've had a lot of experiences and instances that led me down this path. It seems like knowledge was always seeking me out, and I was always seeking it out. But more so on the professional side, I've published two books for the first time last year in 2022. The Lucifer Mystery Revealed and the Anunnaki Theorem, and those two books, and also launched my YouTube channel last year too, or in 2022, Esoteric ADTV. So those three items kind of just propelled me into the community that I'm in now, the Truther podcast community. But even before then, I've been an artist. I've had different incarnations as an artist all throughout my life. And so I've always been writing, I've always been researching, always been making like music and art that revolves all these subjects. And currently working on my third book, so that'll be out this year. But that's pretty much it, man. Just been had a life that's revolved around all of this stuff, and I'm trying to put it to use.
No doubt, brother. I remember seeing you on Tinfoil Hat, but you've been on other shows. So what other shows have you been on? Because you're blowing up right now, and it's like everything on my Spotify is like mostly on my podcast. And then as soon I scroll up, I'm like, there he is again, bro, on another show. All right, I'm on this to this one. So who else? Where else have you been on?
Yeah, at this point, I stopped counting. I've been probably on over 70 different shows. But as far as like really big shows, I've been on Tinfoil Hat. I've been on Aeon Byte. I just did a show for the first time with THC, the Higher Side Chats.
Yes.
There's an episode coming out with them, and then I just did an episode with Eddie Bravo. So I'm going to be on every
Oh,
Eddie
you
Bravo show.
damn! I love Eddie Bravo, bro.
Yeah,
Damn, man, I
yeah.
can't believe you got Eddie, bro. That's dope, bro. That means that's definitely a sign you're going places. I guess the next step is Joe Rogan after that, right?
Naturally speaking, right? Yeah, and I did a show with a cool homie out here in Arizona named Donut. He's blowing up too.
Yeah,
He's
Donut
pretty
too. Yep,
big.
Donut. Yeah, Donut's
Yeah,
dope.
so we got an episode coming out, but yeah, man, just doing what I do, for the people and trying to move ahead.
All right, good man. Well, I'm glad you're blowing up, man. You deserve it. So we're gonna jump right into this, bro. Okay. So
Absolutely.
after the interview that I did with you, I know you already had a sort of discography, I guess, of episodes, and we didn't get to touch on everything because you put out so much material. But one thing I want to talk to you about, and I kind of want to start off like this because I'm trying to contact this individual, and I've been going back and forth. They got my phone number, I got theirs. What did you find out, and what did you think of Sophia Stewart and her
Okay.
story?
Yeah. So I mean, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt, Like
I
I
got you.
want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but if I'm being honest, I think that it's a little like what's the word? Just a little askewed, from her perspective, you know. Um, I don't want to say I don't fucking believe her, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's just a little askewed from her perspective.
Yeah, because I've watched her with your interview and other interviews, and she tends to kind of take over the interview at times, and she won't
Yeah.
allow you sometimes the person sometimes to speak. And her
Interesting
story.
person though.
Yeah,
fascinating woman with
oh,
like high intellect for sure.
dude, you don't even know. Like I had literally like an hour conversation. I could have recorded my conversation with her, and that would have been the interview because that's how deep she is and how
Yeah.
knowledgeable she is. Um, and I'm just gonna wind up doing it. I just have to pick the right time where I feel like I'm ready to do it because she's got like that sort of like she's got like a strong personality. So I got to be able to kind of like get my
Yeah.
get my wits ready, for that shit, man.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh
her
yeah.
story.
She's
So talk about her story, like
yeah,
people
yeah.
don't know.
Well, the first, so, okay, so there's Sophia Stewart, and the first time I saw her was on Killer Priestess podcast, and that's how I found out about her. So Sophia Stewart, she's a woman who claims to have written a story back in the '80s that contained elements that the Matrix movie series stole. That's what she claims. She claims that she originally wrote the basic elements of the Matrix movie series and the Terminator series too. And she claims that both of those films and stories were actually a part of one big story. And she did take Warner Brothers to court. This is factual. There are documents for this. So she took Warner Brothers to court in the early 2000s for this, for basically copyright infringement or something like that. And she won a case, but basically, as I've understood it from listening to different interviews and having the conversation with her, she won the case, but it wasn't for straight up like, yeah, they stole her story. She basically won the case because there was a lot of chaos that ensued during the years of the lawsuits. And so she kind of won like a default case because of all the chaos that ensued. Basically, a lot of, in her words, like lying and corruption that was happening within the lawsuit. At least that's the way I understand it. And she won't ever tell you how much money she got out of it, but she'll kind of always like indicate that it was at least in the millions, if not billions.
Wow, and that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And if I might add too, like not that it makes much of a difference, but she was a black woman, and she brings that up too. So like it's plays into that whole thing, Hollywood,
Yeah,
black woman, black artist, but I mean just her being a woman too.
yeah, because I remember after Matrix came out. This is while I was still in the military. I remember her name popping up and people making fun of her for coming out claiming that. But then like I did my kind of I don't want to say research because I just looked things up. And she did
Yeah.
have a book and it was dated 1980 something, 88 or something like that, which predates the Matrix and the Terminator because the Terminator came out late 80s, I believe. Um I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to ask you that because I know like you dealt with talking to her, you would know better like the
Yeah.
approach, so to speak.
Yeah. I bought her book, The Third Eye. That's what it's called.
Right.
And it's less of a book and it's more of like a screenplay with like notes in it and stuff. So it's a little strange and it's a little vague too. Like it's not like straight up the exact same story. There are just like very similar elements to it. And she claims that the famous line in the Terminator, "I will be back,"
Right.
what came from her story. Because at the end of her story, the alien gods say, "We will be back."
Oh,
So
I got
she
you.
claims that, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of vagueness in it, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like she was a cool person, you know what I mean? So I give her the benefit of the doubt and I'll ride for her, like for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, word up. All right, cool. All right, so let's move on, brother. Let's get to one video that really struck me. It's the meme one and how it might destroy spirituality. So go into like the origins of memes because it goes way back beyond, current technology and being on Instagram and shit like that and the 4chans and all that. It goes way beyond that. So do you mind going into that, the origins of memes?
Yeah. So I made that video. It's a rant video. Will meme culture destroy society or something like that? And I made that video because I had just watched a documentary on YouTube about the whole Bored Ape Yacht Club
Right.
or whatever those. So that was like an NFT project group, and it was a crazy documentary. Some people say it's fake, some people say it's true, but I mean, the crypto industry and all the NFT stuff, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens behind the scenes. But apparently, Bored Ape, which was like the biggest NFT project group, I had a lot of weird occult Nazi iconography and philosophy built behind it. And just weird techie guys, that were all behind it with like kind of just nefarious and sinister energy and agendas. So it was this whole documentary that went into it, and I just decided to kind of make this rant video because I noticed that, for example, in the documentary, they were saying that the Bored Ape Yacht Club kind of was like making fun of Black culture. That the Bored Ape people, like, they're like making fun of Black culture and using all this like imagery, as like just like basically, yeah, making fun of society in general too. And I remember Damon Dash saying, like, why are we buying into this? Like, why are we buying into like all this NFT space stuff when the people behind it are like making fun of us? And it's useless digital stuff, So like there's a lot of things shifting in our world, where it's going to like digital. And so there's all these different entendres on top of this. And so I decided to just sit back and just kind of ask myself, where are we heading, with the digital world and with memes, and I know people personally in the space, online, who are meme lords. They run meme pages and stuff, and a lot of these people are very like, what's the word, nihilistic. A
Hmm.
lot of them are very nihilistic. My generation in particular, the late 20s, early 30s, and so I just see a lot of this becoming nihilistic. It's all, everything's just a joke. Here you have Bored Ape Yacht Club, the biggest NFT project, and NFTs in themselves are a joke. Let alone the project runners like Bored Ape, and they're making fun of Black culture. They're making fun of us, or like, all these little things. And then you have the lower aspects of that, of just memes in themselves are just jokes. It's a joke. It's an easy way, but it's also an easy way to bond and to get a message across. Like, you see a meme, it doesn't even have to make sense. We just get it. It's just a weird
Right.
psychological thing that happens. And as I explained in the rant, that concept is not new. That goes all the way back to propaganda during war times. I suggest that propaganda was the first type of meme, because you see, for example, an image of like, the Japanese or something, and it's like, they're our enemy, so it's like this whole idea of imagery, subliminal messaging, and getting very deep philosophical thought points across in a quick manner just by looking at an image. That whole thing is not new. And more specifically in the meme culture that we are in, although I love it, I love comedy. Comedy is a big part of my life. I love making fun of things. I have a dark sense of humor, so I get it. But I was just asking on a deeper level, what is this really doing to us as a global, human society? And I just see everything becoming more nihilistic, as opposed to being deep like it used to be. And I also prophesize in the rant that I think all this nihilism and soulless art, that it's going to lead to a renaissance, another renaissance where people are going to starve for real, solid, grounded knowledge. So basically, all of this emptiness is going to fade away, and the real, like those who are putting in real work, will rise to the top later on. It might not be during their lifetime, but maybe 100 years from now, people who are putting in real work, putting out real solid material, they will rise above all of this nihilistic soulless stuff.
What effect do you think that has on like the youth? Do you think it's like something where it's desensitizing them in any sort of way?
Oh yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely causing some desensitization, and that's just been a growing trend ever since the internet has come out. It's like that's happened to me, man. Like, I'm pretty like heavily desensitized, but that's just growing up around the people that I did, though, too. Grew
Right.
up around a lot of crude people, but yeah, man, we're just becoming less and less human. Really, that's what it comes down to. We're becoming less and less human.
And what would you? And so you think a renaissance would fix that, but it's not coming. You said for like probably 100 years or so.
At least, man, at least 100 years. I mean, I don't know. That's just me guessing, but I mean, fix it. I don't know, but it's definitely gonna challenge it. I think that, I mean, for example, I have a really close cousin of mine who's been a hip hop artist for many years and who's been a film photographer for many years, and he is like very like authentic and always about the art, and like absolutely has no problem like calling out amateurs and posers like publicly. Like he's like that.
Right.
And so he's a guy who understands. Like, for example, when he was making hip hop, it was all authentic, straight MPC to the record, everything authentic, analog. And he's the same way with everything he does. And so he understands this as well. Like in his space, he does like film photography and all that. I'm not in that space, so I don't understand it a lot. But he sees all this amateur stuff. It's just so cool to be an amateur and all this stuff. And in graffiti too, for example, like we grew up with graffiti artists. He's a graffiti artist. And in graffiti, in today, there's this whole thing called non-style. And it's basically, it's created an avenue for posers.
Mm.
Back in the day, you needed to have style. You needed to
Right.
like actually get down on your craft. And there's this whole thing now called non-style. Literally, like it could be like a freaking 12-year-old just going out and scribbling some dumb shit. And people will be like, wow, that's so cool. It's non-style. It's like, what? Like we used to just call that whack.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Bullshit.
exactly. So we're just allowing too much whackness, for lack of a better term,
Right.
to exist in all of the art spaces and in the human spaces. And I just think that's going to create a huge void. And eventually it's going to go back full circle to where you got to have style, you got to have substance.
Right. Right. So you were talking about like the graffiti. So graffiti is connected to like the essentially the hip hop culture. Do you feel like the crap that's coming out now is non-style and that eventually it'll go back to its roots?
I mean, I've seen some of it on the internet, like, and I get it. I mean, I used to be a tagger, so I know the rush and exhilaration you get from just going out there and just bombing some shit. But I also know that there are OGs in the game and people who take that life very, very serious, So yeah, I think there's just a lot of non-style type of stuff coming out. And it's the same in hip hop, like everybody's a rapper now, right? Because all you got to do is buy a little microphone and rap some shit. And hey, why not? You know what I mean? Like definitely pursue art in life, because you never know what it is that's going to actually hold true to your soul until you try it, right? But it's just this whole thing of like just disregarding the OGs, disregarding the hard styles that pave the way for you to have it so easy. Like that's what I don't like. It's just the disregarding of all that's become before.
Yeah, what I've noticed is like in rock, right? I mean, and I'm not saying this in all instances, but in rock, if you find a kid that's wearing a Led Zeppelin shirt, chances are he knows more about that group than let's say a kids nowadays knowing about Rakim. Like they don't know shit. They don't know who that is. But
Yeah.
these kids in rock, and that's because the torch has been passed down in rock, right? Like the fathers pass down to their sons. And I've done that with my kids the best that I can. Like my son, he's into like some, you know, underground shit. But like most kids, they don't know nothing. They don't know who Karis One is. They don't know any other roots. They don't know Melly Mel. They don't know, unfortunately, Africa Bambaataa. You can't really bring his name because of what he did, but he's still part of history. I mean, it's just crazy that rock is able to do that, but hip hop isn't. Like they strangle the hell out of that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy too because hip hop is like the number one genre right now, and you always have all these new guys just frequently disrespecting the OGs, like Lil Xan just saying Tupac's music is boring. It's like I get it, like art is art, you're gonna like what you like, but it's deeper than that. These are real humans, real people who like pave the way for real lives to be changed.
No doubt, brother. That's dope. So this is gonna segue into the next video that I want to talk about because this one really got me too. Is demonic Hollywood. Okay, and so can we go into the origins of Hollywood and the occult? How them two kind of merge together?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I don't know how deep I'll be able to get on this one. It's been a while since I've really gotten into
I
that
know, man. I'm
topic.
sorry, bro. I'm bringing up like this.
No, it's all good. But this is a topic that I love. Like, this is one of the first topics that like got me into this journey, because I used to just like love watching that early, like 2010, 2011 YouTube stuff where it was all just like Hollywood and Illuminati's everywhere. Matter of fact, the first like YouTube video I ever watched was just like this little quick compilation video with like this like techno music in the background, and it was just like showing like all these images of like Hollywood and the subliminal messaging going on. I used to love those videos. Every now and then I try to like pay homage to that style and make my little compilation videos and
Yes, I
stuff.
can see it. I can see it in your
Yeah.
visuals. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Hollywood, man. I mean, as they say, right? Like the whole idea of Hollywood comes from the Hollywood tree that the Druids would make their wands out of. They would make their wands out of Hollywood. At least that's what they say. And then you just have the whole idea of imagery in general, movies and imagery, just tapping into the subconscious. And I just saw my homie post something that I haven't dug into it yet, but apparently there's a CIA paper that was just disclosed, finally admitting that movies, many movies, hundreds of the movies that we grew up watching were funded by CIA projects to slip in certain programs and ideology. And I just got done watching a movie this morning, and it's like it's funny when you watch certain movies, you can like blatantly notice like the advertisements in it.
Right.
Like the actor will pull out like a soda and just kind of like flash it in the front. You know what I mean? It's like it's also
Right.
like
What movie?
The Secret Window.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
First time watching it, I had to
Mm,
watch it. Especially because I found out it was a Stephen King novel or
right.
based on a Stephen King novel. I was like, oh, what, dude? But I mean, I love art, man. Like even if it is like CIA programming, like I get it, But I just love art. I'm a writer myself, so I
Right.
appreciate what's behind it. But yeah, man, Hollywood is all full of a bunch of weirdos. Just a bunch of weirdos. But to me, back in the day, I was more convinced that it was like run by satanic pedophile reptilians, and not to say that it's not. But the older I get, the more I start to see behind the scenes, and because I've met famous people at this point. I've been around circles and stuff like that. And the more to me, it's all just, they're just people, man. They're no more different than us. They're just more annoying and more passionate about things that
Right.
we're not passionate about. And they're just posers to me, like anybody else.
Do you think they know that they're being used to push this agenda, like agendas and
Uh,
stuff?
I think for the most part, they're not. I mean, like, for example, like in Corey Feldman's case, right? Corey Feldman was a young child star, and he didn't know, he didn't know, but like as he said later on in life, he realized as he grew up that a lot of the men and possibly women around him were pedophiles. So
Ooh.
I think a lot of times it's just young people who are trying to live that dream. Like they're passionate about acting, they're passionate about the movie industry, and so they get into it the same way that I'm passionate about plumbing and writing books. It's like you just find yourself in the inner circles of the industry that you're passionate about. But for the most part, I think these people aren't aware of it until they get into it and then later find out, oh shit, it's too late. It's too late. Like
Right.
I'm in it.
And it's global, correct? It's not just Hollywood. It's any sort of industry, right? Any sort of
Yeah, man,
extent.
there's corruption everywhere, dude. Yeah, I've seen it in many different other facets of life. It's funny too because in the truther community, we put so much emphasis on these people like being influencers and controlling our lives, which they do. But to me, it's just like they're just people, man. They're just people like us, and I don't
Right.
see them any different. They're just as annoying as the person at the bus stop or whatever.
Right. So when the pandemic hit, or the scandemic, like I call it, in 2020, because we were home, I think a lot of us, I don't know if you agree or disagree, were able to sit down and watch things and kind of like be exposed to more things, and I got to see like dudes like yourself exposing these things that were in front of my face and I wasn't really noticing. Um, what have you noticed in the last 3 years concerning, like, like with the Kanye thing, the Isaac
Yeah,
Cappy thing, and all that, like all these things that are coming out now all of a sudden, the Epstein thing.
yeah. Yeah, well, what I will say is like nothing ever just happens. It appears that way because everything has a climax, but nothing ever just happens. It's like if you, for example, Kanye, if you look at his life, this dude's been on a downward spiral forever. I mean, he's been on a downward spiral and it's just been getting more and more crazy. And as he's been getting more and more rich and as more and more in the public eye, it all came to that head. And so a lot of things in life, they just, if you really take the time to examine them, it's like it's obvious that it was heading in the direction that it was. But apart from that, it's like we're heading into what the Bible calls the apocalypse, which literally means like the unveiling.
Right.
In the end of days, everything will be revealed. All will be revealed. So if you want to speak like on a spiritual, energetic level, it's like the veil is thinning and everything is being revealed right before our eyes. I mean, literally, we've never lived in a time where information is as readily as accessible as it is. Everything is just being held to the light right now. People's true person and true soul is being put to the test and revealed right now.
So do you believe that we're already in the apocalypse rather than heading towards it?
I would say we are in an apocalypse. If we're speaking strictly biblical timeline, I don't think we're in the. I don't think the Messiah is returning soon, to put it simply. But we're probably somewhere closer to that than we were before, for sure. And the only reason I say that is because, and this is just my own personal belief. I've always felt like the Messiah is going to return after our world is completely encased in the new world order. I mean, there's going to be nobody left born in this world that remembers the old days. The days that we're in. There are
Right.
too many people on Earth right now that still remember the old days, still remember what a real human is. So I think that the end of days is going to come when all the babies that are born on Earth are born into the new world order, as opposed to being succumbed and subjugated into it.
So essentially, you and I, and maybe like my kids, we're the last, right? That's it,
Yeah, we're the
right?
last, man. We are the last of a dying breed, and that's why it is important to pass down the knowledge, because although that generation or that world in that future is going to be completely encased in the new world order, I think there's still going to be a small percentage of people that are going to know the truth and are going to be passing it around. But in what form or version, I don't know, because it's going to be such a crazy world we can't even fathom. It might be some weird holographic like thing that they pass around or something. You know what I mean? Like some weird
Right.
little technological thing that they have in secret. Maybe a crystal or something. I don't know, but that's why
Right.
it's important to keep the history going, as it was told to me. It was told to me. I tell this story a lot, but I was told about the end of days by a camp supervisor when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and
Shit.
it was the
That young?
strangest. Yeah,
That's tough.
yeah. Yeah, it was the strangest thing, man. It was because I'd gone to this summer camp for years, still remember all of the supervisors' names and faces, but there was this one super camp supervisor that got hired for this one summer, and so he was new, and I don't remember his name, but he was just like this young dude with who had blonde hair and was always wearing sunglasses. And I joke around and I always say that he was like a Nordic alien, like the tall whites.
He
It's
might
like,
have been.
dude, because and at the time I didn't know how to swim, and so we went to this pool, and all the kids were swimming. I was the only one outside of the pool chilling with him, and for some reason I don't know why he decided to start talking to me about the Book of Revelation and the end of days, and warned me at 7 or 8 years old that there's going to be this thing called the mark of the beast, and that at first they're going to be nice about it, and then slowly start to push it, and then there's going to come a day. And he looks me in my face and says, "There's going to come a day, Eddie, where they're going to force you to take it. And it's going to be better for you to die in the name of Jesus than to take that mark of the beast." And so ever since then, I've been aware of that, and I've been preparing for that. So when the scamdemic happened, I wasn't the least bit surprised or scared at all.
Right. Yeah, because you already knew the signs already from it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Well, all right. So the next one I want to talk about, like another dope video that you dropped. It's called "World Controlled by Hidden Powers," and it's mainly Jordan Maxwell, right? Talking. Who was Jordan Maxwell, and why is he so important?
Man, Jordan Maxwell is just like one of the OGs of the truther esoteric community. He's been putting out work, I guess, since the 80s for sure. I don't know if the 70s, definitely the 80s. I mean, he's one of the first guys to do it, big time. And he's just put out so much for us, man. Like so many books, so many presentations, videos. He's been featured on a lot of documentaries, and he had a very unique way of talking and putting together information. You know, he's up there with like the David Ikes and like the arisecreations and all of that. And I actually got a chance to meet one of his longtime friends. So there's a bookstore in San Diego called the Book Tree. It's actually my favorite bookstore that of all time. Like
Right.
I haven't found a bookstore better than that one. And so I met the owner, Paul Tice, and and that was a funny story too, because I was living in Northern California plumbing, and I did a job for these like older hippie people, and I told them I was from San Diego, and they're like, "Oh, you gotta check out my guy Paul Tice's bookstore." I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll check it out." And it wasn't like till a couple of years later when I was back in San Diego where I was like, "Oh, dude, I remember that name in the bookstore," so I went to go check it out. And I met Paul Tice and we started talking or whatever, and come to find out that Paul Tice was actually one of the dudes that helped get Jordan Maxwell published during his early
Wow.
days. Yeah, so they were close friends. And Jordan Maxwell has this UFO story that you might have heard. If not, it's on YouTube, but I think it's the only Jordan Maxwell UFO story. But Jordan Maxwell got chased around by a UFO in the desert, and he was with two other people. And Jordan Maxwell was like freaking out, like, we got to get out of here. But his two friends were like, no, let's go back. Let's like go to the UFO. Let's go to it instead of run away from it. But they ended up running away from it because Maxwell was afraid.
Right.
And one of those other guys was Paul Tice,
Oh
you
shit.
know. And so I've met the guy. We've hung out, and I actually gave him a couple copies of my book to hold at his store.
Right.
And so yeah, so Maxwell, man, he's just an OG. He's been in RIP. And I'm selfishly sad that he passed away, because I was actually supposed to meet him 3 days after he passed away. We had planned to meet and do an in-person interview, but he had just 3 days after the day he had passed
Right.
away.
That sucks, man.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I know I've been listening to him for years. What I noticed in the video, a lot of references to mushrooms, right? Particularly red and white ones, but I don't know if that has any significance. But why mushrooms? And if there is significance to red and white, why red and white?
Okay, so that video on my channel, the Jordan Maxwell one, Secret Controllers of the World or something like that.
Right.
Um, So I'm okay. So I made that video actually because I got inspired by this other compilation video that did something similar to it. Again, I love those like compilation style videos where it's just like very like weird, like ominous images to like music and shit. So
Right.
I saw this other dude years ago make a video similar to that. And I was like, dude, this is so badass. Like, I want to make something like this. I was almost going to just rip his video and then put Jordan Maxwell over it. But I was
Right.
like, that's too easy, man. Like, let me just try and recreate it. So I
Right.
recreated what that dude did, because I just thought it was super dope. But the red and white mushroom is the Amanita muscaria mushroom. And I made a little reel recently about that too, with Terrence McKenna talking about it. And so Terrence McKenna and a couple other people have this theory that the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the red and white mushroom, which is psychedelic, was actually the influence for Santa Claus and elves and reindeers. That whole fairy tale is like based on like an ancient like pagan ritual having to do with Amanita muscaria. And I can see that because of course the red and white, but like when you're
Right.
tripping, probably back in the day, we would actually see elves, what Terrence McKenna called the machine elves. So this whole idea of like little like gnomes and Santa Claus with the gifts and the Christmas tree with the lights on it, like all of that weird stuff. Like there's a theory that all of that came from like a pagan ritual where we would trip out and like see lights and see geometry and see little elves and stuff like that.
Dude, so you're telling me that possibly we're celebrating Christmas, but we're like dry, we're on a dry trip, right? Like because
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
the lights in our house, that are blinking, and we, have pictures of Santa Claus and elves all over the place, elf on a shelf, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're dry tripping, dude.
We're dry tripping on
And
fucking
the reindeers
psychedelic.
too. Reindeers out there in like the
Right.
cold areas actually eat the Amanita muscaria. So like
Oh,
that, yeah.
And is that why what's his face has that red nose? Fucking
Oh yeah,
Rudolph, the
Rudolph.
red-nosed reindeer.
Oh, he was doing coke, man. He was on some other shit.
Yeah, he was on some other shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. All right, so also in that video it talks about the controllers. So in your opinion, who are the controllers? Like,
Yeah. This is a fascinating topic, and I just got done writing about this in my new book, which is coming out in April, which is
yeah,
about consciousness and the simulation reality slash theory. Um, it's funny because the Gnostics, right? The Gnostics who wrote about basically the God of the Bible being this false God and stuff like that. They talk about the archons, and the archons being like basically these demonic forces that secretly run the world. All religions talk about this. All religions talk about these hidden, demonic forces that secretly run the world or try to deceive us and stuff like that. But I found it funny or interesting that the word archon in Greek just basically means rulers. And
mm,
so anything that rules or controls us could, by definition, be an archon. And in my book, I start, going into different aspects of daily life that rule us and control us, like social media, our addictions, our habits, depression. And so, all throughout human history, we've talked about these unseen forces that control us, these unseen negative forces. And depression is a force. You can't see it, but it's a
correct.
force. It changes your
Correct.
life, it changes your whole entire anatomy, because depression changes what goes on in your brain and stuff. So, yeah, for sure, there's probably reptilians and definitely demons and stuff like that for sure. But I just think on a basic level, the controllers that we're dealing with are just our own inabilities to reach our higher self.
Damn, bro. You definitely an artist, bro. Just the words that come out of your mouth is just art. But anyway, do you think non-humans live amongst us, like from the past and in the present? This is based off of that same video because it talks about that.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Like I wrote a book last year, the Anunnaki theorem. Obviously, hot topic. Everybody loves that topic, and I came to my own conclusion. And at the very least, the Anunnaki were not human, because by definition, what a human is, which is what we are, is a mixture of some hominid, some early hominid, and whatever the Anunnaki were, right? Because the Sumerian texts tell us that when the Anunnaki made us, they took their blood and an admixture of what they called clay, whatever that could mean. And so, by definition, a human, a Homo sapien, is a biologically engineered being that was created out of a mixture of whatever the Anunnaki were and some early, hominid. So that's what a human is. We're like the first AI. So the Anunnaki were not human; they were humanoid, but they were a pure breed of something else from somewhere else. Eventually, down the line. But other than that, I definitely vibe with the idea that this Earth and our solar system have produced time and time again all types of sentient beings. Like we're not the first, man. Earth itself, if we believe the mainstream narrative, is almost 5 billion years old. So, and our current timeline that we exist in is only about 7,000 years old.
Right.
If that, I mean, 7,000 years old, dude.
That
That's
ain't
not
shit.
that long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that ain't shit.
I mean, I'm sure if you did like ancestry.com, you could find your Sumerian fucking grandpa. So it's like,
Yeah,
of course, this earth has produced a lot of sentient beings. And again, by definition, they wouldn't be human.
right. I don't know if you ever heard of the Juan on Juan podcast. He's like,
Absolutely. That's the bro,
right.
man. I've been on there a few times.
Yeah, Juan on Juan is dope. He talks about this thing called a homunculus.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so when he was describing what a homunculus is, it's very similar to a golem. I think Hebrew. That's like their like thing where they made it out of clay. So essentially, we're golem, right? Like we're like
Yeah. I mean,
golems.
straight up, man. The Homo sapien was like pretty much like the first homunculus. And it's weird. I just found out that there's an anatomy term in the brain that is called the homunculus.
No
So
way.
yeah, the human brain has a homunculus. That's what like the early anatomists called it, because that part of the brain, the homunculus, I guess it either looks like a face,
Right.
or it controls like the face and the arms or something. I didn't get look too deep into it, but all I know is that the human brain has an anatomy part called the homunculus. So we all have a little person in our head
Yeah.
controlling us.
Right, right. What was that fucking with Will Smith? And he had the alien, but there was a smaller one controlling that machine.
Yeah, dude, the archons, man.
Yeah, that's it. The Archons. There was a video years ago, man, that was on YouTube, and YouTube is fucking killing everything. But I couldn't find it anymore. But it was such a dope video about Archons, and this is before like I heard even David Icke speaking about it. But anyway, the next video that I wanted to talk about is technology and demons. Who's in control? So we're still gonna go on that control narrative, right? So get into
Yeah.
that video. Uh about how like fire was essentially our first technology in a way. You had somebody on there that talked about fire being our first technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So that video is actually a documentary version of an essay that I wrote for this journal based out in Florida titled Subtle Body Press. Good people, they reached out to me like early last year to do it for them. And so but it just got released. The journal just got released like late last year, or early this year. I don't know. But
Subtle
yeah,
body press, that's them.
yeah, Subtle
Okay,
Body Press.
I'm gonna write
Super
that
cool.
down.
Um, but yeah, so my essay was about technology, and its influence on us. And I was basically posing the question throughout the essay, are we just making technology because we like to, or were we designed and destined to make technology for some bigger purpose that we don't even know about yet? Like, is the AI calling us to make technology so that it can manifest? But as you mentioned, the fire thing, in the beginning of the essay, I kind of refer to Bill Cooper's idea. Bill Cooper, the classical American conspiracy theorist, he postulated the same thing, and he said that fire was the first piece of technology that man created. It was the first wielding of elements that we had that gave us power. And through that technology, fire, the first priesthoods were formed. And priesthoods were formed around the idea of fire and the making of fire and the containment of fire. And that whole idea of light, according to Bill Cooper, carried on to Lucifer, being the light bringer and giving us more knowledge and giving us more priesthoods. And we could take it even further to like big tech companies and technology. All of technology is run off of like fiber optics and light and stuff like that. So it's like the idea of fire and light just continues to be expressive in different ways, and it's all just the same thing. Just this force, this technology, that's being used for what? To advance us to the future. For what purpose? Well, as we see right now, we're advancing to what the big tech guys like Elon Musk or Ben Goertzel call singularity. Singularity is the moment where AI is going to become self-aware, and where Homo sapiens are going to officially merge with technology and transcend that and become immortal.
Damn, brother. So how does CERN play into that? Because following that conversation in the same video, get into CERN. What's CERN? What is CERN and what's its occult roots?
All right, so CERN is a science facility based out in Switzerland, and they have the world's largest hadron collider. It's massive. I don't know the exact number, but it's huge. And what they do there is basically smash particles. It's a little more complex than that, as I've learned, but they smash particles and they try to see basically what comes out of it. And the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to find deeper and deeper microscopic levels of reality, because they're trying to find the fabric of reality. We haven't found it quite yet. They found things close to it, like the God particle and stuff like that. So that's what they do. But what's interesting is that I made a video recently, it's a small one, I think, on my channel called CERN something something. And
Yeah.
towards the end of the video, there's a the scientist from CERN giving a TED talk, and he says that it fascinates him because it gives him a mythology, where we have they basically just disregard the Bible and religion and spirituality and say all that stuff's myth, all that stuff is fairy tale. Whereas CERN is creating their own mythology about the universe, a practical mythology, because they're actually looking at how all things were created. And so I just found that a little alarming because, again, it's just man poking at nature, trying to make sense of it through their own mind, where the universe exists without us.
Right.
It's us who need it. And we're always trying to poke at it and give it its definition that suits our understanding, where it's actually the other way around. The universe is giving us existence and us understanding. And when I
Correct.
say universe, I mean in a general sense of God the creator. So that's what CERN is, man. They're just another one of these ambitious human science projects that are poking at nature, trying to find its deeper and deeper secrets. And a lot of people have claimed that because of them doing that, we've had some interesting effects in the fabric of space time. And one of those effects would be the Mandela effect.
Right. Okay. So I was gonna ask. That was the next question about was the Mandela effect. Do you believe that CERN, because there's obviously you and I and others that are into these topics, we know that in the last few years things have changed to the point where we're like we have to stop and question, like, hey man, there's something not right. Is something not right in the air? Things that used to happen before are now somewhat backwards. The way people act, we're humans become more spontaneous with their emotions when they used to be able to like just think things through. Now it's all spontaneity. Boom, boom, boom. I'm gonna fuck you up. All this shit. Do you think it's because of CERN that maybe it did something to the time, caused a time rift, so to speak?
Yeah, I think they did, man. I think they definitely caused the time shift. And most people think it happened right around 2011, 2012.
Yep, that's what I
I
heard.
think I think that could be possible. Things are definitely different and weird. And I wish I would have wrote down some examples, but I know over the years I even picked up on like little nuanced things in my own life. Like, what the heck? Like that wasn't always like that. And but yeah, everything's shifting and changing in weird ways. And I think it's a part of that apocalypse or part of that progression towards singularity. Like we're also going to start noticing multidimensional connections and shifts and probably be more aware of the multidimensions. And it's funny because for the past, what, like 5 years, like that's all that Hollywood has been pushing. It's like all these multidimensional movies, multiverse this, multiverse
Right,
that. So it's like, damn, dude, I was just barely getting to understand this universe. Like now I got to deal with seven other ones.
right. I got you. I got you. So, do you think technology like has blocked us from being like creative? Because in the video, in your video, it talks about like how Einstein and Nikola Tesla used to meditate before they even wrote anything down, and they used to get like ideas from like you know higher knowledge, and things
Yeah.
along those nature.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think all of us have that ability, and we use it on a daily basis, but we don't acknowledge it's fast. It's fascinating power. Like when you have those flashes of just like random thoughts, like, oh, I should do that or whatever. That's the same thing, but these guys were just operating at a higher level. But yeah, so Einstein, he used to like sit back and just envision things. He'd envision entire mathematical equations and stuff like that, and then go and put it down to paper. And same with Tesla. He would envision entire schematics, and then go and write them down. Granted, these guys were from a different era where we used more of our brains, I think, our bodies. We were more analog. Now it's all
Right.
digital. We rely on technology more than back then. But I've had even moments like that, dude. Like I've had moments, for example, like my new book, I saw all of it in a flash when I was at work underneath the sink. I just saw the entire thing. I saw the colors, I saw the name, and so I think we all have that. And the more
Right.
we hone into the source, the akashic records of sorts, it becomes more, that intuition becomes stronger.
Do you think okay because you're a plumber,
Yeah.
you love doing what you do, and when you're doing a job, I would imagine you go into this zone and maybe that opens up for ideas to come to you. You think that's how that happens?
Yeah, I've never really thought of it that way, but yeah, you're right. Because I do get into a zone when I'm at work, and that zone mindset, I think, is like transcends time and space, and you're like almost living in infinity in that moment,
Right,
because your thought waves become so focused and so heightened that it's like time and space don't even exist for that moment, and like you're
right.
just opened up to source, and all kinds of things can come in between you in that space.
Yeah, when I'm doing artwork, I when I get into that zone, it's the same thing. I feel like I'm not there, but I'm there, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a
So
good.
in this
When
video, go ahead. I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just say when I'm in that space, that's how I know like I'm doing good work. And when I'm
Right,
not in that space, like I'm too like focused on what's going on around me. Like, oh man,
right,
I gotta. I'm not in that zone.
right. That when there's too much distraction or you're being like hit with too many things, you're
Yeah,
I don't know. It's weird. I feel like those are the archons that are fucking with us, like
there
not
you go.
allowing us to be in the zone. But in that same video, you talk about mushrooms again and whether they're sentient. So do you believe that they're sentient? And if you can go into some of your experiences on psychedelics, like what did you gain from that? Like was there anything that you gained from that that really helped you?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so I got the mushroom tarp in the background.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna reference.
Yeah, they played a huge role in my adolescent life, man, in my young life, and still do. Yeah, I brought them up in that video and that essay because, again, I was talking about technology and what is really pulling us towards this singularity, and I realized that there are different consciousnesses existing on this earth, at least, that are speaking to us. And one of those is the mushroom. The mushroom has been communing with us since the beginning of our existence as hominids. And they're a fascinating creature in themselves, very intellectual plant, if you want to call it that. And they've been around just as long as any other life. I think I read an article at one point that stated that fungus, was actually the first biological entity that touched on ground, that left the water and touched ground. It was actually fungus. So the mushroom
Right.
consciousness, the mushroom family has been around for a very long time. And just recently, some scientists found out that certain mushrooms actually speak to each other in a language of at least 50 words.
Oh
So
shit.
there's an article that came out, I think, last year. Yeah, I might do a little deeper dive on it, but if you look it up, mushroom speaks language, you'll probably find it. But they concluded that those, I think, 4 or 5 mushrooms at least have speak to each other in at least 50 different words. And so they're very intellectual, and so they definitely have consciousness. How deep or how extensive it is, we don't know. So it's my personal belief that when we ingest the mushroom, we are actually taking on its consciousness, like we are communing with it. Like it, that's just what I think. I just think when we eat it, its consciousness kind of like embeds itself in us and communicates with us for a little bit and then dissipates.
Right.
And my first mushroom trip, I was probably like 13, 14. And man, the anxiety, dude. I remember we were at the train station waiting for my cousin's connect, and he didn't show up. It took him like 2 hours. So like we had a lot of time to like doubt it, like, should we do it? Should we not do it? Should we do it? Should we not do it? And so we ended up doing it. And I'm just so glad that we did, man. It was just, oh, sorry. No, that was actually my second shroom trip. The first shroom trip I ever had was with my best friend and his brother. And it was the perfect shroom trip because so their mom was leaving for that weekend. And so they had the house to themselves. So we planned to do it that weekend. It was just us three. We're going to trip out, have the whole house to ourselves. And as soon as I showed up to their house, I was like, "What up, dude? Let's get this started." Their aunt pulls up,
Oh
and their
shit.
aunt was like this short, like just very exuberant Guatemalan lady, just had an accent, just very like high strung on life, just very excited. And so she's like, "Hey, I'm here to spend the weekend with you guys," and we're just like, "Oh fuck, man!" Like,
Oh yeah, chaperone. That sucks.
yeah, but we didn't let it get in the way. Like she picked us up and she wanted to take us on like a college and university tour. to like inspire us, as young men. And so we're like driving in the car, and we're like, my friend's older brother's like passing the shrooms around, like low key, like without the aunt noticing, because she's like just this oblivious little Guatemalan lady. And so we're all eating the shrooms in the car, like just like, yeah, let's go check out some colleges. But I mean, dude, it was just like I was not prepared for that, like my whole entire world shattered. Like I didn't understand how eating this little thing can
Right,
change my entire perspective. Everything was just wavy and morphing, and my
right.
thoughts, all this trauma was surfacing, and it was fun. It was very fun. And I've tripped a bunch of times throughout high school and in my early 20s. And that concept of understanding the shroom was sentient and that it was communing with me like developed over the years. And more recently, I've just microdosed, and and through my years of tripping, the shroom consciousness has told me, for whatever reason, that I've already learned what it needed to teach me, and I don't need to keep coming back. That's what it
Oh, wow.
continually tells me, you know. But I do plan on going back because I feel like at some point there's going to be a new lesson.
Right. I've been wanting to do shrooms for a while, like before the pandemic or whatever. I've been wanting to. I just don't know where to start. But you said microdosing, and shout out to Push Buttons. He
Yeah,
told me the
yeah.
same thing. But I just don't know where to get them. I mean, I know they're illegal in some places. I just don't know if they're legal here. But I'm definitely gonna do it. I have to find a way to do it. I might hit up Chaz of the Dead or something because he's in
Shit.
Florida and
I'll send you a good connection, a very reputable,
right.
professional young gal in LA. She's got
Okay.
a great operation, does things very professional.
Oh, word. Okay, word up. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. All right, so let's jump into this. Uh, get into the okay. Before we go into the next section, the next video, because this next video I love, bro. But I had another question about this video about CERN. But you were talking about the four yuga cycles. Can you get into those? Because that's very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know a lot about this, but it's just something that I've lightly touched on over the years. But the Yuga cycles come from basically Hinduism, the Vedas, and they talk about basically the entire universe or the consciousness of humanity going through four cycles. And I think the totality of the cycle is like 432,000 years, or no, 4,320,000 years, which is interesting to a lot of people because the whole number of 432 plays into all kinds of different esoteric numerology with like 432 hertz and stuff like that. But the four cycles are basically the cycles of consciousness that we go through. And basically it's like a rising and falling cycle. There's like a golden age and then like a very terrible age. And that terrible age is the Kali Yuga cycle.
Right.
And that's actually what we're in right now. I think
Shit.
we're at like the tail end of the Kali Yuga cycle. So again, going back to the whole apocalypse singularity thing, that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing everything being fleshed out, everything being nailed to the cross and being put up and splayed in full display for the gods to judge.
Damn, brother. Shit. And we're and it's funny how we're in that fucking stage, man. Like
Yeah,
I wish I
dude.
would have talked to you 20 years ago. We're like, oh, it's coming, but no, I'm talking to you now. We're in that actual stage,
Yes,
in the
sir.
apocalypse, brother. All right, so this next part, bro. I love all your videos, man, but this one was probably one of your dopest. And the only reason why is because I remember in '97, I was working at this video game store, and this one weird dude walked in and he had this like it looked like it was put together like with glue and all that, and it was Valdemar Valerian's book, one of them. I don't know which one it was, but I remember I wanted to steal that shit from him because of the illustrations in it.
Yeah.
Had dope illustrations. So I know that Valerian, he doesn't have Valdemar Valerian, he doesn't have like his face out there. There's no pictures of him. He's very unknown, and he has a book series. Can you get into that a little bit? Because that documentary was dope.
Absolutely, dude. And that's cool that you got to like see that back in the day. And so I learned about Valdemar Valerian actually through just my homie on Instagram. He sent me the Matrix 3 book. He's like, yo, you should check this out. And I was like, what is this? And then come to find out that I knew about it all along because Jedi Mind Tricks named their first one of
Yes.
their first albums after his work, the psychosocial, chemical, biological, whatever. So and looking at it now, a lot of Vinnie Paz's earlier lyrics were like
Right.
influenced by Valdemar Valerian's work. So it's funny how it was in my subconscious this whole time. So after I looked into it, I was like, oh man, this is fascinating stuff. So Valdemar Valerian, which is a pseudonym, it's not his real name. He released a book back in, I think the first one was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
It slips me right now, but it was titled The Matrix, and he ended up writing, I think, 5 of them. So it was a Matrix series, and they're just very dope books. They're very like they're written kind of like government documents. Like the style of writing, it's like you're reading like a government document. That's the only way I can really explain it. It's not like a book. It's like
Right.
it's just like documents with like headers and like just bits of information. And throughout the entire series, he reveals information that's coming from whistleblowers, experiencers, CIA documents, government documents, his own experiences. So it's just like a huge amalgamation of all this like declassified information. And as I said in the video, like he was doing this like way before any of this was mainstream,
Right.
like way before Ancient Aliens, way before Disclosure, way before Gaia TV, way before any of this. This dude was way ahead of the time, dropping just straight facts and gems in these Matrix series. And like you said, they're jam packed with like super interesting, like just cool art, like just dope
Right.
artwork. And I'm an artist, like I love that kind of stuff. So
Me too, brother.
yeah, it's just dope. And I don't have any of the physicals, but when I was at the book tree chilling with Paul Tice, I asked him if he had any of Valerian's work, and he didn't have it, but he had some of the leading edge stuff. I have this right by my desk. So the leading edge was actually
Right.
Valerian's publishing group.
No
So
way.
yeah,
That's dope, man.
yeah. So if you want some more of Valerian, not directly, then look up the leading edge. You can still
Right.
find
Right.
some of this stuff. It was like a journal, like this one right here. It's got different topics that go into like different stuff, different writers
I
or
mean, the
whatever. But
artwork's the same as the Valerian
yeah,
shit.
yeah, it's still like just like very cool, like heady
Dope,
stuff.
bro.
It's very heady, like
Like
black
that.
and
That'd be
white
that'll
stuff.
be a dope logo, man, for somebody, man. That fucking
Yeah, dude, I'm a graphic designer, do a little bit of that. So
right.
I love
So you
coming
see it,
across
right?
stuff
You
like
like
that.
you can see it and you know that shit is dope.
Yeah.
What the Valerian books, the Matrix books remind me of is when I like after I got out of the military and I was looking up like more, paranormal shit. There was a book called the Russian KGB Book of Aliens and the
Oh yeah.
Species. I don't know if you ever seen that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
that one's pretty heady too.
that's dope. That's dope. So it reminded me of that. But in the documentary you talk about how Eisenhower made this pact with the Greys. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, so what I did for that documentary is I combed through the entire Matrix series 1 through 5,
And
and
you
I
have them
basically
all, by
no,
the
I
way? I'm
PDF.
sorry.
I got them in PDF.
I got one in PDF, but they're not available anymore, are they?
Yeah, yeah, I could send you them.
No,
I
but I'm
could send
saying
you
like
them.
physical. Like
Oh, physical?
are they
I
probably
don't think.
gone?
Yeah, they're gone. You got to find like
Ah,
rare copies and stuff. But so I combed through the entire series and pretty much just pulled out all the important information about the Greys and the reptilians. Because again, like this whole project was him pulling information from whistleblowers, experiencers, government documents. So it was all like very serious stuff. And so I combed through all of it, took that information, and then kind of like organized it in a timeline. And so apparently, at some point, right around when Roswell happened, we captured a gray alien, and he was known as EB, extraterrestrial biological entity, and we held him captive, I guess, to try to like get some secrets out of him. And then there was like this weird communication between our government and the Greys, and the Greys were like basically saying like, "Yo, let our homie free, and we'll give you back one of your guys," because apparently they took one of our guys captive. And so Eisenhower and his administration and stuff, they made a deal with the Greys, like, "All right, we'll give you back your homie and stuff like that." And all that, but we also want to make another deal and create a contract with you guys and allow you guys to abduct a certain amount of humans every year if you give us technology in return. So apparently there was a deal made that went down, and that happened for some time, but apparently the Greys stepped out of the contract and started abducting more people than they were allowed to. And so that caused like a tension between us and the Greys. And then there was another aspect where we actually reached out to the reptilians, according to Valerian's work. We reached out to the reptilians to try and stop the Greys because the reptilians are the only ones that can stop the Greys because
Right.
apparently the reptilians created the Greys.
So the
And the
enemy of
Greys,
our enemy is our friend.
exactly that whole thing. It's a triangle of just enemies going on right now between the Greys, reptilians, and us.
Damn, man, that is okay. So, how? Because you also state in the video, or you put in there the different uh races of grays and reptilians, because it's not just one type. Um, do they currently exist? Are they still messing with us on our planet? And how
I
many
think so,
different
man.
races are they? I'm sorry.
Now go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I think so, man. Unfortunately, I've never seen one or been abducted. Fortunately, maybe fortunately, I don't know. But I think they are. And but it's interesting. I haven't really heard anything new or seen anything new about that, like but apparently it's been going on forever. Like Credo Mutwa talks about it, the African Zulu Sanusi.
Right.
And so this has been going on forever. UFOs have been going on forever. And according to Valerian's work, there are the reptilians and there are grays, but even within their races, there are different variations. Just like on our planet, there are humans, but we got different shades, different variations.
Right. All right. So last thing about this is do you think Earth is being terraformed for these beings with the chemtrails and all that shit? Like little by
Yeah,
little.
yeah, I think that could be possible for sure. I've thought about it. I've come across information like that. Yeah, I think Valerian mentioned it too. Like the reptilians are terraforming it so that it could be suitable for them, and maybe that's a part of what quote unquote global warming it really is about.
Right.
You know, I think even at some past, Earth was terraformed. In the past, Earth was probably terraformed, right? There's that whole thing about those weird, strange, like black balls or something that were found somewhere in Africa. I've
Right.
dug deep into that, but I think it was terraforming in the past for sure.
All right, my man. So let's get into this next one, dude. This is another dope one, man. When you came out with this, again, I put a comment in there about this rapper who was loosely affiliated with the Wu-Tang Clan. His name is Shabazz the Disciple. He has a song called Death Be the Penalty. And one of the lyrics is the pale-faced devil race, Caucasoid germ, grafted from original black man sperm. So you had a video about this so-called black alien, so to speak, named Yakub. What are the origins of that?
For sure, yeah. So the Nation of Islam to this day tells a mythology about the origin of white people. And they say that white people were genetically engineered by a big headed black alien scientist named Yakub, and that he did this 6,000 years ago in Mecca or, out there in the Middle East. And so this story was first told by the Nation of Islam and has had variations throughout the years. And like you said, it's been told in hip hop. I've heard people tell that story in hip hop and stuff and refer to it as well. But that story actually didn't start with Elijah Muhammad, who most people think of as the creator of the Nation of Islam. And I used to think he was too until I started doing the research for this video. I always thought he was the one who started the Nation of Islam. But come to find, there was actually a guy before him who was his master. And this guy's name is W.D. Fard. And so W.D. Fard was an immigrant from Mecca, he claimed, who came here in like the late 20s and instituted the first like black Muslim or one of the first black Muslim movements. Before him, there was a guy named Noble Drew Ali. So Noble Drew Ali was actually the first to institute the very first
Right.
black Muslim movement, but it definitely didn't have anything to do with aliens or anything like that. It was more so just about building a cultural movement to give them pride and discipline and stuff like that. And then so after Noble Drew Ali, there was W.D. Fard, and W.D. Fard came here, and a lot of people kind of described him as being like a peddler, like a hustler, like a door-to-door salesman. And so he concocted this whole idea of Yakub and white people and took black Muslim identity to a whole new extreme. And he claimed that he was Allah reincarnate. he would
Yeah.
tell Elijah Muhammad and his followers that he was Allah reincarnated and he was here to give this message. And strangely, the FBI was following him around, and there are declassified FBI documents that you can read to this day, like I mentioned in the video. And the FBI too noticed that he was just like this peddler, hustler guy, who just knew how to sell things, knew how to
Right.
be charismatic. And he was actually driven out of the East Coast by the FBI because I guess he was on the run for allegedly convincing one of his followers to commit like a human sacrifice or something like that.
Oh shit, man.
Yeah, so he was driven out in the 30s, and to this day, he's never been found. So WD Fard has been missing ever since.
Damn, man, that's crazy. So what else can you tell me about Yakub? What else was he known for? Did he do anything like that was historical?
Well, the way I see it, it's just a story, man. It's just a
Right.
mythology that was created by W.D. Fard to kind of like give credence to the whole Black Muslim identity and movement, because their whole thing is basically built on that they are the chosen people, that they're the actual real Israelites and Hebrews, and they're God's people, and that the white man is the devil and he's here to trick them and deceive them. But it's a fascinating legend. I mean, the way the story goes, that Yakub was this black-headed scientist, but when he was a child, that before there were any white people, he realized the power in polarity after he played with some magnets, and he realized that opposites attract and that there's power in that. So as a child, he decided that when he grew up, he was going to create an opposite man. He was going to create the very first white man, and he was going to use the white race to trick his people into subjugation. So Yakub was kind of like this sinister guy who wanted to like rule his black brethren, and he
Right.
was going to do that through his white creation.
That's crazy, brother. All right, man. So the last video, man, that I'm gonna cover, I was almost finished with it, but I just want you to give like a synopsis on it, and that's the newest one, Lemuria and the root race synopsis.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is a topic that's been talked about for many, many years, and I decided to do a video on this just to kind of like do my take on it because it's a hot topic. And so within the esoteric truther community, the New Age community, we hear about Atlantis and Lemuria and ascended masters a lot. And I like to tackle subjects like that like have this huge, that get talked about a lot, that are popular and have profited, that many people have profited off of. And what I found was interesting. So for one, the whole idea of like the root races within the esoteric community, that mostly came out of Blavatsky, the Russian mystic who started theosophy and stuff like that. And she basically describes that there was an evolutionary process that eventually led to physical beings, the physical human, and that the original races actually started off as spirit bodies. That we started off as spirit bodies, and slowly we gained our physical bodies, and that this was happening simultaneously on the different continents of Earth. So when she says root races, it's not like there was a black race, a white race, a yellow race, so on and so forth. That she meant it in the sense of like the root races of all physical bodies in general. And so she describes that throughout the continents, this process was simultaneously happening. We started off as spirit bodies, and slowly those spirit bodies evolved into hardened bodies. And at first, they were androgynous, and they used to lay eggs. She claimed that we used to lay eggs as androgynous beings, and then slowly the sexes were formed, and then we started to procreate, and then our bodies were fully realized. But she claims that in that process, some of the celestial beings that helped all of this happen, the celestial beings, the gods who were overseeing this, some of them got greedy and selfish and descended into the physical bodies that were evolving so that they could have physical bodies and have fun here.
Right.
But they did so before our bodies were fully formed. So some of these descended beings, they entered some of the deformed bodies, the bodies that weren't fully formed. And so they had to suffer the evolutionary process of that. And so she claims that some of like the less evolved people of Earth, like for example, the Aborigines of Australia, as she claims, are actually a part of this subset of the original root races of the descended masters who entered these bodies at the wrong time. And
Right.
some people see that as a bit racist. Then I could see
Uh,
that,
yeah.
but her and her people claim that it has nothing to do with the race. It just has to do
Right.
with, the ethnicities and the type of body.
Right.
So that's her whole thing. But she created that as a response to the theory of evolution, because Blavatsky was alive during the time the theory of evolution was created and first presented. So she saw that happen. And her being a mystic and a spiritualist, she didn't really like that explanation of who we were and how we got here. So she created all of that as a response to evolution. She tried to create an explanation of our spiritual evolution. And so getting to Lemuria, that was a part of her explanation too. She was like, just like many of the other mystics and New Agers, she threw Lemuria in there and said that, this process of our spiritual evolution, during the process of our spiritual evolution, we used to live on Atlantis and Lemuria, but it's all gone now, and there are races existing today on Earth that are a part of those civilizations. But Lemuria was actually a concept formed by an anthropologist, more specifically a zoologist. His name escapes me right now, but it's in the video. But this zoologist during the late 1800s, early 1900s, he found that there were similar lemur bones on the core on the coast of Madagascar in India, and so he postulated that because there are similar lemur bones on the coast of Madagascar and India, there must have been a land bridge at some point in the Indian Ocean that bridged these two lands together. And so he came up with the idea of this land being called Lemuria, based off of the lemur bones.
Right.
That's why it's called Lemuria, because of
Okay.
lemurs. And he wasn't the first to think that. There was actually a legend coming out of southern India about a lost land in the Indian Ocean as well, but they called it Kumari Kandam. And so after the idea of Lemuria became popular through this zoologist's work, the southern Indians, specifically in Tamil, were excited and took hold to this new science coming out, and were like, yo, this is proof of Kumari Kandam. So it's all just a mixture, man. It's all a mixture of these different histories and sciences and philosophies coming together, and that's how we do things, man. It's what I'm realizing through my work. It's like, as humans, we just love to throw things in the mix and
Right.
generalize and exaggerate.
How do you come across a lot of this stuff that you look for it, or is it a combination of like you go down one rabbit hole and then you find out, oh, there's a side, opening leads to another rabbit hole. Like how do you come up with the things that you've been coming up with?
Yeah, I start usually just with like a simple subject. For example, it'll be like Lemuria and the root races, and then I always start with the origin of it. I always start with, where did this come from? How far back can I take this? I do that with all my work. I start with the basic question of, for example, in Lemuria's case, I'll start with the basic question: where did the concept of Lemuria come from? Who started that? And so that led me down to that zoologist. And along the way, I start to learn things that I didn't even think to ask of. And that's the fun part of it for me. It's like learning all these new things. So yeah, it starts with that first question, and then as I get into that, I start to find these new pieces of information and new pieces of question. And a lot of times there's so much that, like, I want to put it all in there, but I kind of have to cut some of it out. Like,
Right.
okay, even though this is cool, it's not exactly on point with what this is going to be about. So a lot of it is yeah, finding out new information and deciding what is going to be cohesive to make this simple enough for the people to understand.
Okay, so one of the last few questions, I promise.
It's all
Um,
good.
Cryptozoology. I feel like it always creeps up in the same vein as paranormal and all this other stuff. Do you see yourself ever doing anything like on Sasquatch or Dogman, since it's like a hot topic, especially now more days than ever?
I don't see myself doing it as of right now, just because it's not something that I'm really passionate about. But maybe, like, because yeah, maybe I have a binder of things that I write down, You know,
Right.
because whenever I run out of ideas or I have a new opening for an idea, I'll go to my binder and be like, okay, what's something that somebody suggested to me recently that I can get into?
Right.
So yeah, I might eventually at some point, but as of right now, it's just not something that I'm passionate about.
Right. Has any of those things come into, like, any stories of those come into, like, kind of like, you're doing something on UFOs and then you find out, oh man, there was a Sasquatch sighting around that same time or something,
Yeah, every now and then. Now, actually, when I was doing research for my Tibet documentary,
Right.
I think I put it in there too. There was a legend of like this, basically the abominable snowman over in ancient Tibet. I think I put it in the documentary. That's the only one thing that's the only thing that like rings a bell in my mind right now.
Right.
Yeah, because I do a lot of research in like ancient cultures, ancient mythologies. So every now and then I do come across some stuff like that, but it's just not necessary for like the specific subject that I'm working on in that moment. So I kind of always usually just leave it out.
I got you, brother. So you're coming out with a book, you said. Do you have a name for the book already, or
I do, but I want to keep it
you want to keep it on the wraps?
secret for
Okay, I
now.
got you.
Yeah,
And you said it's going to be released when?
at the second week of April.
Okay. And then do you have any new docs coming out, like on your channel? Anything new that you're working on right now?
Yeah, yeah, I got the entire month of March already covered with videos to drop every week. I try
Word
to
up.
be an entire month ahead of myself.
Right.
So I'm working on next month's videos
Right.
this month. So yeah, this month's a little light on the deep side, like the documentary I just dropped with Lemuria. That's probably like the deepest research I'm going to put out this month because I do different things. I'll do like full on documentaries where I'm doing my own research, and then I'll do compilation videos, and then I'll also do interviews also to kind of
Right.
help fill in some time because it gets hectic, man. Trying to like
I got you.
like do all of this. So sometimes I'll
Right.
do an interview. Interviews are cool because I get to talk to people, meet people, but it helps me buy time because I can drop that video and continue working on what I'm working on.
I got you, my
But
man.
but
And,
yeah, man,
and
you'll see some stuff dropping every week on schedule.
yeah, and then the shorts that you have on YouTube are dope too. Those little short videos that you have, those are
Yeah,
really dope.
that's a new thing
Um,
I've been doing too. Yeah, just because I do that on Instagram and TikTok anyway. I'm always dropping reels on Instagram and TikTok. So I'm like, might as
right.
well drop one on YouTube as
Yeah,
well.
it's dope, brother. It's dope, man. So, Esoteric Eddie, you killed it again. Thank you so much. Dropped a lot of knowledge. I'm gonna have you back on for sure, probably in another 6, 7 months.
Yeah, well, once I drop the book, man, I'll reach out and we
Yeah,
can talk about
please.
it.
Yes, brother. All right, man. Thank you so much for doing this, my man. All right.
Thank you.
Be safe, brother.
Peace.
Namaste, man.
Absolutely. Namaste.